Hi everyone, this is Diary of a Mystic. Welcome back to my channel. There's a 38-acre parcel of land in Middleway, West Virginia, which sat dormant for 150 years. In 1978, this land was donated to the Catholic Church, which is now known as Smithfield. Smithfield has a haunting history. One night in 1797, there was a series of unexplained manifestations that drew crowds from far and near in the town known as Middleway. Many have speculated that this was poltergeist activity, and in 1797, an exorcism was disposed in the home of Adam Livingston. This is a local ghost story and a true ghost story based on actual true events known as Wizard's Clip. Going back to February 1739, John Adam Livingston, who was born in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, when he was the age of 33, he inherited his father's 70-acre farm in what was known as Smithfield, Virginia, which has now since become Middleway, West Virginia. In 1772, he moved his family there. He had 3 sons and 4 daughters. He and his wife were practicing Lutherans. The Livingston family was plagued by numerous negative events, which began with the sudden death or disappearance of their livestock. Their crops were dying. Items in the home suddenly went missing or were found broken. Strange scratching and other noises in the home began to occur. Unfortunately, these events continued to occur with the sounds of footsteps and other strange noises, as well as financial losses through the livestock of the Livingston family, who of course had a farm. In the historical documents, there's one thing that is left out of the historical document of this story is a visitor, the unknown stranger, who visited the Livingston family home one day in 1794. A middle-aged man knocked at the door of the Livingston family home and asked to lodge there or stay there. Adam Livingston agreed out of charity and goodwill to allow the stranger to stay at the family home. A few days after the arrival of this unknown stranger, he became ill, and his illness became more threatening. He called Adam Livingston to his bedside and told him that he was a Catholic. He then requested that a priest be summoned, as he apparently felt that he was about to die. Adam Livingston, who at the time was a Lutheran, was not very favorable to the Catholic Church. And he told the unknown stranger that he knew of no priest in that neighborhood, and if there is one, he should never pass the threshold of his door. Once again, the unknown stranger who was dying repeated his request for the spiritual assistance of a Catholic priest to read his last rites. But Livingston refused again because, in his own defense, there was no Catholic priest in the neighborhood or Catholic churches nearby. Soon afterwards, the stranger died in Adam Livingston's home. On the night of the stranger's death, the poltergeist activities began to increase in intensity, and Adam Livingston, who, out of respect for the deceased unknown stranger, employed a man by the name of Jacob Foster to sit with the corpse of the unknown stranger. When nighttime fell, candles were lighted in the room of the deceased unknown stranger. They suddenly all went out, and the room was left in darkness. Jacob Foster attempted to relight the candles several times, thinking the candles were defective or perhaps were extinguished by some sudden breeze. He later attested that he never felt a breeze, but the candles kept being extinguished without any apparent cause. Notified of what was going on, Adam Livingston then brought 2 more candles into the room, which he had been using in his own family room. And he knew these candles to be good. As soon as he placed the candles in the room with the unknown stranger's corpse, they became immediately extinguished. This event alarmed Jacob Foster, who had been sitting up with the corpse, that he abandoned the corpse and immediately left Adam Livingston's home. The very next day, with the help of neighbors, Adam Livingston buried the stranger on his property, without, of course, being able to mark the grave properly because of not having any kind of identity or documentation. He didn't know the man's full name or birth date. Soon after the burial, there began the negative events described at the time as the Wizard's Clip. Adam Livingston and his family became greatly disturbed by the apparent sound of horses galloping around the house. On the first night of this occurrence, Adam Livingston investigated the strange sounds, and he frequently kept waking up during the night, but he couldn't find any reason or any cause for the strange galloping sounds. He and his entire family could distinctly hear the tramping of horses, but none of them could find the cause or the source of the disturbing noises. During this time, his barn was burnt to the ground, and a number of his cattle and livestock either died or they strangely disappeared. Inside the family home, the cookware was thrown upon the floor and broken without apparent cause. Strange bells would clang, disturbing its hearers in the home. There was a phantom bell clanging, and other strange negative events, such as sudden disappearance of coins and money. The heads of the turkeys and chickens were strangely removed. Burning embers of wood would suddenly leap from the fireplace several feet out onto the floor. Soon, these negative events were destroying the peace of the family. One night, the sound of a large pair of shears or scissors could be distinctly heard in Adam's home. Clipping in the form of half moons and other strange shapes and figures, his blankets, his sheets, tablecloths, shoes, clothing, all were clipped. This is what was soon called or began the wizard clip or the Livingston wizard because of the incredible clipping that continued on a daily basis for upwards of 3 months. By this time, the news of these strange events were spreading throughout the countryside and attracted local citizens. A woman who lived in nearby Martinsburg, who was Presbyterian, heard of the strange clippings that were going on at the Livingston home and arrived to the home to satiate her curiosity. Before she entered the door, she took from her head her new silk cap, wrapped it up in her silk handkerchief, and put it in her pocket to save it from being clipped. She was very skeptical that such stories were even happening or were even true. After her visit, she stepped out of the home, and while doing so, she drew out of her pocket her handkerchief containing her new silk cap and opened it. To her shock and horror, she found the cap cut in narrow ribbons. 3 young men from Winchester, Virginia, who were friends to the Livingston family, declared their utter disbelief of the strange reports and requested to sleep in the house in an effort to refute all that was being said. However, a few moments after arriving in the home, a large stone was seen to proceed from the fireplace and to whirl around the floor with great velocity, which immediately caused one of the young men to flee the home. Many visitors also reported an alleged rope that appeared to be blocking the road leading up to the Livingston house. However, when those who saw the rope or attempted to grab or move the rope, it was found to be immaterial, and thus it was termed as the phantom rope. The purpose of the phantom rope, many believed, was to deter people from visiting the Livingston home, and many believed it was a tactic of demons to isolate those of whom were being attacked. The negative events were taking a deeper toll on Adam Livingston and his family, as can be imagined, and everyone knew that the source was evil. The strange events were taking such a deep toll on their mental and emotional peace and well-being. At first, Adam Livingston sought the help of a local Lutheran minister whose efforts did not help, according to records. He then consulted with the help of 2 Methodist ministers, but apparently neither of these individuals were able to help. So one night, Mr. Livingston had an extraordinary dream. He saw a beautiful church, and inside was a minister dressed in peculiar robes, and he heard a voice say to him, "That is the man who can relieve you." Waking the next morning, he decided to seek out the man in this dream, and he set out for Winchester, Virginia, and sought Reverend Alex Balmain, who was an Episcopal minister. Reverend Balmain convinced Adam Livingston that he was not the robed individual he had seen in his dream, and he was not in the business of removing spells, ghosts, and things of that nature. However, Reverend Balmain suggested that he consult a Catholic priest, since the Catholic Church is more familiar with such things. So, with reservation because of his Lutheran background, Adam Livingston asked around about finding a Catholic priest. He was directed to the home of a devout Catholic family named McSherry. Late that evening, Mrs. McSherry saw Adam Livingston, whose farm was about 4 miles away, coming to her house, and she met him at the gate. When he asked to see a priest, she told him there was no priest there, but there would be one celebrating Mass at a home in Shepherdstown the following Sunday morning. On that Sunday, the McSherry family met Mr. Livingston in the Catholic home in Shepherdstown. As soon as the priest, Father Dennis Cahill of Hagerstown, Maryland, appeared at the altar vested for Mass, Adam Livingston suddenly burst into tears and exclaimed, "That is the man I saw in my dream. He is the one who will relieve me." When Mass was over, he went right to the priest, poured out his story, and begged him for help. Father Cahill agreed to visit the haunted house. The priest questioned the whole Livingston family, children, and they all told him exactly the same stories concerning all that was happening. He therefore consented to say some simple prayers of exorcism, along with sprinkling the house with holy water. To everyone's utter amazement, as Father Cahill was leaving, a sum of money that had recently mysteriously vanished from Adam Livingston's locked chest was suddenly laid by what seemed to be invisible hands on the doorstep near the priest's feet. According to the written testimonies, the poltergeist activity stopped for some days after Father Cahill's prayers and blessing, but then they suddenly began to occur again. Adam Livingston immediately went back to Father Cahill and explained the recent events. Father Cahill came back to the Livingston family home, and this time he celebrated Holy Mass inside of the home. The supernatural activity immediately stopped, and afterwards the weeks and months passed in a renewed peace and calm for the Livingston family. Smithfield, Virginia, where all these events were taking place, which is now known as Middleway, West Virginia. The happenings at Smithfield, Virginia were now known as Cliptown, as many locals were now calling it. Following the exorcism, another priest, Reverend Dmitri Galitzin, also visited the Livingston residence around 1797. In a letter written in 1839, a year before his death, Reverend Galitzin declared that after 3 months of witnessing the disturbances at the Livingston home, quote, "I was soon converted to a full belief of them." Galitzin had Reverend Cahill come back to the Livingstons' home, and together they performed an exorcism that allegedly caused the house to shake with the rattling and rumbling as of innumerable wagons. Finally, after Reverend Cahill performed a mass in the house, the haunting stopped for a brief time. Following the exorcism, records indicate the Livingstons were later beset by a haunting of a different kind, his family began to hear an audible sound, something they called the voice. Reverend Cahill continued visiting the Livingstons to bring them into the Catholic religion, and found now that the family was being instructed by the voice to teach them about Catholicism. The voice was said to exclaim, "I want prayers," and would shame the members of the Livingston family who were not pure in their confessions. After these unusual circumstances, the Livingston family became devout Catholic converts. In February of 1802, Adam Livingston deeded a portion of his land to the Catholic Church before moving back to Pennsylvania, where he lived until he died in 1820. In accordance with his gift of the portion of land given to the Catholic Church, he stipulated that there should always be a member of clergy on the land, and that any profits of it should go towards a building or repairing a church on the land. The legend itself continues to be a prominent feature of the local culture in Middleway, West Virginia to this day. You will see many triangular historic markers that still bear a crescent moon and shears or scissors in opposite corners to honor the story. The land that Adam Livingston deeded to the Catholic Church is now known as the Smithfield Pastoral Center and still belongs to the church. It is now used as a peaceful retreat from religious leaders to different kinds of clubs and groups. To this day, it remains in the hands of the Catholic Church.